Good afternoon or evening to everyone who's here, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Elyssa Rabinowitz. I'm sitting in Yerushalayim, and we're very appreciative to all of you for being with us here today. I'd like to open by thanking all of the sponsoring organizations who have come together to make this session possible. The event is part of the Beit Midrash for Israeli Rabbis Week, Torah Leadership Choice, which is a program of the Shalom Hartman Institute and Midrashet Oranim, of which I am a graduate, and is organized in partnership with many organizations, ITIM, the Rackman Center, Kolenu, formerly Kolech, Gluya, Jofa, Yeshivat Maharat, Midrashet Ein HaNatziv, Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, the International Rabbinic Fellowship, Uri Letzedek, and Torat Chaim. So thank you all for your support, and thank you to all of our speakers and all of you for being here. We're gathering here today in order to discuss an Israeli High Court of Justice petition that yielded a victory last July, about half a year ago, and has had new developments as recently as this past Wednesday. It's been a very long journey. It's important to understand that here in Israel, the Chief Rabbinate, which is funded by the state, controls the religious courts and has control over marriage, divorce, and burial in the country. The official Chief Rabbinate also determines state-provided and funded rabbinical roles, such as neighborhood or city rabbis. 8 years ago, in February 2018, a group of female halakhic scholars attempted to register for the Israeli Rabbinate exams and were refused. The response they received was that only men could be tested on the laws of Nida. As a result, about a year later, in April 2019, the ITIM organization, together with the Rackman Center and Kolech, filed a petition to the High Court of Justice in order to allow women to be examined on the tests, like men, on their halakhic knowledge. The petitioners are Rabbanit Rachel Karen, Rabbanit Avital Engelberg, Rabbanit Shlomit Flint, Rabbanit Shlomit Piamenta, and Rabbanit Sarah Segal-Katz, who's with us today. It's important to know that by the time they filed the petition, most of these women had already been ordained as rabbis, or rabbiniot, through Orthodox halakhic programs, all of them private. They had already in practice been teaching in various institutions and were serving as halakhic authorities for a wide public, both women and men, on questions across different areas of halakha. They filed the petition in order to ensure that any woman with advanced halakhic knowledge could be examined on her knowledge through the officially recognized exams in Israel, not only through private programs, which resonate within certain circles but lack official recognition. They knew that certificates from official halakhic exams carry economic significance, and that without them, women would continue to face barriers to accessing state tenders. They also knew that official certification matters for professional standings, not only in the eyes of the public, but even in the eyes of the learner herself. This petition was a public act. The petition was immediately accepted by the court, which stated that indeed there was gender discrimination and that the issue must be addressed. However, it took about 6.5 years until the ruling by Justices Noam Solberg, Ofer Groskopf, and Daphne Barak Erez was given this past July 2025. The justices unanimously agreed on the obligation to allow women, like men, to sit for the halakhic examinations administered by the Israeli Rabbanut. The court's decision was clear and unequivocal, leaving no room for doubt. There was a wide range of sources cited by the presiding Justice Noam Solberg, which brings together in one sweep the positions of diverse halakhic authorities, Rabbi Zalman Sorotsky, Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Cohen Cook, Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein, and Rabbanit Malka Piotrkowski. The justices drew an explicit parallel, asserting that today's women Torah scholars are the Bnot Tzlofchad, the daughters of Tzlofchad reborn, challenging institutional blindness and forging precedent. Justice Daphne Barak Erez summed it up well. May the best person win. May the best person prevail, regardless of gender. The ruling has not yet been implemented, but it seems that we are now close. It was announced in July 25, as I said, and between July and this past Wednesday, the Rabbinate did not open registration for the exams for anyone, for men or for women. Just this past Wednesday, it was announced that registration is open for the halakhic exams of the month of Iyar for both men and women. The list of subjects is exactly what the petition addressed: Shabbat, Kashrut, Isur v'Heter, mourning, marriage laws, and also Nida. Many women and men are waiting this historic moment. With that said, the joy is cautious. There's some fine print in the Rabbinit's announcement, which makes it clear that things may not be so smooth as we move ahead, but I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about this as we continue today. So today we'll hear about the process that got us this far, some insights into the significance of the impact of this process for the future. We have 4 speakers. We will hear from Rabbi Dr. Seth Farber, attorney Elyssa, Sakat, Rabbanit Sarah Segal-Katz, and Rabbinit Dr. Esther Fisher. Each of the speakers will share one of the perspectives on this legal case and on this journey of religious feminism, which has its roots going back decades and which we hope will bear fruit for decades to come. I'd like to say a word about the format of the evening. We will hear from each speaker individually for about 10 minutes, and then we will open it up for questions and answers. Your microphones are not open, so we ask you to put your questions into the chat. I will collect them and we'll address them all at the end after all 4 speakers have spoken. With that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Rabbi Dr. Seth Farber. Rabbi Farber is the founder and director of ETEAM, an organization which is committed to making Israel's religious establishment respectful of and responsive to the diverse needs of the Jewish people. He's also and ETEAM was the organization, one of the main organizations that did the petition. He's also a founder and director of Giyur K'Halacha, Israel's largest non-governmental conversion court network. He's a recipient of the Nefesh B'Nefesh Bonei Tzion Prize and the Israel Ministry of Aliyah and Integration's Prize for Outstanding Contribution to Israeli Society. Rabbi Farber, b'vakasha.
Thank you very much. The perspectives, first of all, thank you to all the sponsoring organizations, to all the Rabbaniyot that are participating, and all the participants. It's somewhat humbling to be part of this, and I appreciate your support over the last 7 years or 8 years as we've been working on this. I want to divide my comments into 3. The first is to talk about how ETEAM got to this, and that's my kind of very thin perspective on this. I also, and I think this is something that I can add to the discussion, even though I'm going first, not speak so much about the content of the petition as much as kind of the rabbinic response that I at least received in doing this, and then talk a little bit about the future. So in terms of the past, it's important for me to say from the outset that ETEAM's participation in the lawsuit was a strategic decision, not a symbolic one. It was part of our broader mission, as you heard a couple of minutes ago, our vision of making Israel a place that's respectful of and responsive to the diverse Jewish needs of the Jewish people. One of our main projects is the issue of gender equality within the religious establishment. And this petition provided an opportunity for us to kind of think broadly. And its immediate effect didn't affect a tremendous amount of people, but of course its implications and its breadth had the opportunity to do just that. It also met some of our other criteria for choosing cases that we kind of adopt, which we have a assistance center that's helped more than 100,000 families navigate Jewish life in Israel. But our legal center and our policy center have a set of criteria by which we work, and this involved not just having cases that have broad reach, but also can involve multiple partnerships. Almost all of our legal cases involve partnering with other like-minded organizations, and sometimes not even like-minded organizations that we can work with, and they can have broad implications, and most importantly, they can create a shift in the discourse, which we can change things not just for an individual, but take an individual case and kind of change things fundamentally for the broader public. And we thought this was a really good opportunity to do that. And I'll talk about that just for another moment when I talk about the future implications. So again, it's not symbolic, it's substantive, and it meets our criteria, or met our criteria, both because of its core topic, which is gender equality within the religious establishment, making Israel a place that's more respectful, more responsive to the diverse Jewish needs of the Jewish people, and involving a lot of partners, which has just been great in terms of, especially for two reasons. Like I said, has a double aspect. One is it's good to have that kind of support, and secondly, when you're on the, when people are attacking you, it's good to know that people have your back. So, number of institutions, etc. I will say, as with many, many of the cases that E-Team takes on, this is done not just deliberately, but with a lot of concern and careful thought. Taking on lawsuits is always an expensive endeavor. It's also a binary endeavor in the sense that we win, they lose, they win, we lose. And it's important for me to say from the outset that we spend years trying to negotiate with the Rabbinit in all sorts of ways and trying to come to compromise. I don't believe, E-Team doesn't believe, that the future of the Jewish people has to be decided by decisions that are we win, you lose, or the other way. They should be decided by discourse, by dialogue, and most importantly, by compromise, if that's what's necessary. And we were willing to compromise, but we didn't have much of a partner on the other side, so to speak. In terms of rabbinic response, so I will say there was rabbinic response in all sorts of ways. Of course, there was public rabbinic response that was very, very vituperative, I would even say, antagonistic. So the chief rabbis, both then and now, and even previous chief rabbis, even today, one of the former chief rabbis, Rabbi Amar, said, we're better off not giving exams to women and never giving exams again in the chief rabbinate than offering exams to women. So there was a lot of angry rhetoric. I think most of it misplaced. There was another element of I would say negativity that came from some of the institutions that actually teach women scholars and that have been involved. And I think they were afraid of kind of losing their hegemony to a certain extent. That's certainly something to think about. As long as things were privatized, everybody could kind of forge their own way. And from my perspective, I felt like any team felt the strong need to have kind of like an institutional standard, not only for the economic benefits, although not only was that the basis of the legal case, but it actually was a very, very compelling moral case. But I felt like very strongly that once we were in this, I felt very strongly that there would be an opportunity to kind of level the playing field, that women who were certified in Hilchot Shabbat could consider themselves experts in Hilchot Shabbat, not feel like just there was an institutional certification, and women who were the same for Hilchot Taharat HaMishpacha or any of the topics. On the other hand, I think there was a lot of quiet support of this. There was a certain sense of the validation of scholarship of women and kind of giving it a sense of real expression and even constructive engagement, in the sense that rabbis felt like there was be more of an opportunity to do things. And I'll add that even from the institutional world, even though the chief rabbis were opposed and continue to be opposed, and in my meetings with them even today, they're continue to be opposed, I think there's a sense that they understand that, for example, this is a very Israeli thing, but since in the 30 or so municipalities that have a job that's dedicated to the overseeing of mikvah in the local religious councils, they understand the absurdity of the fact that by threshold definition, only someone who passes the exams. I'm not saying this is in every case, but in most cases, you have to have passed the rabbinic exam in Nida, and no woman has ever had the opportunity to do that. So by definition, they're not even eligible to apply. So that kind of sense from certain, I would say the more moderate religious councils, that this is an opportunity kind of, without compromising on our threshold requirements, we can find a path for women to come in. And I should say that E-Team, this isn't the first time E-Team has been in this space. We sued already, I think in 2011 or so, for women to serve as legal counsels in the rabbinical courts. We obviously, for those who are familiar, we took on cases that related to women's autonomy in the mikvah. And we have a number of other cases up on the pipeline about these areas. I want to talk for just a moment and then finish up about the future, and then we'll have opportunity perhaps during the question and answer. Like many things that happen in my life, and particularly in my professional life, there's all sorts of surprises that come along the way. I don't think we anticipated at the beginning for sure what the opportunities would be uh, for not just for women to reserve certification or to feel that they took the exams, but the employment opportunities that are going to be available post this. Meaning, I mentioned a couple of minutes ago jobs within the religious establishment and religious councils, but I think there's a whole host of employment opportunities for women halacha scholars, whether they're called rabbis or rabbaniyot or rabbah or maharat or whatever it is. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people who pass this threshold, if it's the 4 exams or the 7 exams or the 11 exams, whatever it is. But I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities. I think it creates an objective standard that will become kind of the industry standard for the service in the religious establishment. And I think that's going to create a lot of new jobs. And the second thing, which I didn't anticipate as much, but now I'm beginning to sense, and I think it's very promising, is I think that when you have a certification process that's nationalized or internationalized, if you will, I think that's going to create, it's going to generate, and I haven't hesitated to make this prediction. I'll predict it again now. And for Rabbi Fisher, this is particularly good news. You'll quote me on this in 10 years, but I predict within 10 years, the number of students, women students who are studying these halacha programs will at least double. That's not to say everybody's going to go into this profession or everybody's going to get a job, but I think there will be a certain standard that people want to achieve that standard. They want to have that, so to speak, in their pocket or under their belt or whatever phrase you want to use. And I think that will create a lot more. That'll be good for the Jews. I mean, it'll be good for halacha. It'll be good for Talmud Torah. And I think it'll be good for the broader swath of Jewish people who are just familiar and literate and conversant in halakhic matters in a way that everybody acknowledges that that's the case. So just to summarize, we went into this, again, with a certain sense of trepidation, like we do with every lawsuit. Not more, not less, with every lawsuit. It's important for me to give credit, not just to Ella, who's on the call, but also to Elad Kaplan, who kind of pushed me on this when he was working for us as the head of our legal center. And also, of course, to the petitioners and the other groups, Kolech and the Rachman Center, who certainly played an important role in making this all happen. But none of us, I think, thought this was symbolic. We all thought it was substantive. I think that from the perspective of meeting a criterion, it met our criterion. We were prepared, maybe not for all the rabbinic criticism, but for some of it. Some of it, I think, was in the form of rhetoric. Some of it was more substantive. And some of it we took to heart, and we wanted to negotiate. And in terms of the long term, I think it has incredibly positive possibilities. It's going to open up a world of opportunities. Again, we're still going very slowly. We're making sure that the women who want to take the exams will be able to take them, right? That the 441 shekel that they charge will not be an issue for anybody, things along those lines. I will just end by saying that I don't think anybody on the call or outside should anticipate that hundreds of women are going to sign up for the exams in ER. First of all, these are serious exams. I took them. I know what it took me to study. I'm not saying anybody else couldn't do it faster or slower. I'm just saying I know these are serious things. They can't just be, it's not like a turn on switch and you can just do it in a minute. There's certain objective things that we have to overcome, which I don't know if anybody's thought about, such as, at least when I wrote my exams, I wrote them in the first person, and we don't, right? So until then, it was kind of like a level playing field. But the moment a woman writes in feminine and not in masculine, it'll be obvious that it's a woman, even if you don't have your name on it. And we have to resolve those problems in some way. We have to overcome certain, inhibitions of the rabbinate to do this. But I think those are all overcomable. And we certainly, at E-Team or Ala Mishmar, we're certainly taking care of it. We're in touch with the heads of the Midrashot, and we're doing our best to make sure that everybody who wants to take these exams can. So thank you all for participating. And again, there's a world of opportunity in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Farber, especially for your optimistic view of the future. It's really inspiring and hopeful, and for the hard work that got us to here. I'd like to now introduce attorney Elyssa Sakat. She is newly the CEO of the organization Matirot, which you may formally know as Mavoy Satum, which works on behalf of Agunot. But she headed the legal department at E-Team during the time of the court petition, and we'll hear from her more details about the petition itself and about the ruling. So Attorney Sakat, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. So, as you said, I was the head of the legal team at TTIM and represented the petitioners in the Supreme Court at this case. And when we look at this ruling today, I want to highlight the core legal strategy that got us here and share a bit of irony. This victory would never have happened without the unexpected help of one Mr. Aryeh Deri. You probably know him. Our petition was built on a fundamental principle of administrative law. Public services must be provided equally, unless, of course, there is a relevant objective reason for different treatment. It sounds pretty obvious, but for years, the Chief Rabbinate had a legal shield. In 2014, when TTIM first asked why women couldn't take these exams, the Rabbinate replied, these exams are for ordination, asmacha. We don't ordain women according to our policy. Therefore, there's no point in testing them. At that time, that argument actually made legal sense. But then came Aryeh Deri, our friend now, and everything changed in 2016. Aryeh Deri issued, as a Minister of Interior Affairs, he issued a directive making halakhic education equivalent to academic degrees for public sector jobs. This means that the Yoreh certificate, the basic certificate granted by the Chief Rabbinate, is equivalent to a BA degree, and the Yadin Yadin certificate is equivalent to a PhD. It was a massive change at the time. And this policy was extended to the entire civil service, and not only to those who had the full certificate, Yoreh Yoreh, Yadin Yadin, but also those who have passed only some of the Rabbinate exams. And they could apply for government jobs, qualify for professional development bonuses, and get higher pay grade. Because of that, suddenly, these exams of the Rabbanut weren't just about ordination. They weren't just about halakhic asmacha. They became a gateway to professional tenders, salary grades, and financial benefits. This was the opening we needed, actually. A second. If these exams provided economic perks, denying them to women isn't a religious issue, it's economic discrimination. So we proved through Freedom of Information requests that took us almost 2 years that most men, about 2/3 of them, taking these tests never even finished their ordination process. They just took the exams, that's it. So we filed the petition and then asked the court, if the Rabbinate is essentially running a professional testing center for the job market, how can they legally exclude women? That was the main premises of the petition. So it took us 6 long years, very long years, and only 3 hearings. The state admitted the legal difficulties, but refused to do anything to fix it. Instead, they stalled, asking for extension after extension to build a separate but equal system, to make another system that will examine women outside the Rabbanut. The problem was that no government office wanted to touch that ticking time bomb. After years of 45 days and then 90 days and 60 days, all delays granted by the Supreme Court, the court finally had to step in and decide. Now, this ruling was published about 6 months ago, but the exam system, as we mentioned, was completely shut down. I think it's because the Rabbanut just didn't know how to handle this verdict. Eventually, mamash this week, the Rabbanut finally announced they are opening the exam to everyone. And this is a huge news, huge, massive. But I know many of you are skeptical and probably worried that the Rabbanut will pull a new shtick, some bureaucratic trick to make it impossible for women to actually succeed. And that fear is completely understandable. But it's important for me to say that there will be growing pains in that process. But as an activist lawyer, I've learned that every legal victory is just the start. It's not the finish of the process, it's the start of it. The next step is always, always the enforcement and implementation. It happened for us before, Rabbi Farber mentioned it, at the mikveh petition, when we filed a petition to the Supreme Court to allow women to immerse according to their own custom in the mikveh, and even without a mikveh attendants present if they want to. It wasn't easy, it took us a long time, but eventually we got the verdict. But that wasn't it. In the years following the verdict, ITIM sent countless of legal letters and even filed a second petition to make sure Religious Council complied. It took us a long time, but in recent survey that ITIM made, it showed that almost 90% of Religious Council now respect that right. It's amazing. It's something we never thought was impossible 10 years ago. And I really do think that in the following years, after that, this winter, we're going to see a massive change. And I know many of you probably have a lot of questions about how things will work on the ground. I probably won't have answer to all of them, but my best advice for anyone interested in taking the exams is just to sign up. Sign up, and if you run into any issues along the way, no matter what, reach out to the excellent legal team at ITIM. They have an amazing staff that provides both legal and public support for any problem that arises. And I'm confident that we will get there in the end. It's going to take some time and I'm sure some twist in the plot that we're not expecting right now, but we will get there. And if you're asking me what's going to be in the following 10 years, I'm certain that the Torah world will look entirely different. Female Torah scholars will be the standard. It will be much easier to choose that path. And I think it's going to be so weird for us to think that once upon a time it wasn't possible. So thank you all for joining and being a part of this, and I hope we'll get to see the change very soon.
Thank you so much, Attorney Sakat, and you too for your hopeful and optimistic view of the future. And I really appreciate you bringing the example of the mikveh petition, because in our lifetime, we've seen how that has significantly changed. And you described all the steps that got us along the way to that point. And here we are at one of those points in this case. So thank you very much. I'd like now to introduce my friend and colleague, Rabbinit Segal-Katz. Before she begins, I want to express special gratitude to her for being the initiator and convener of this session today, and for all the hard work she put into bringing us together and making this happen. Thank you so much. Rabbanit Sarah is one of the original petitioners on the case. She has 3 rabbinic ordinations from Beit Morasha, from the Rabbanut Israelit Beit Midrash, and from Yeshivat Maharat. She is also the founder of Gluya magazine, where she creates resources bridging halakha, relationships, and contemporary life. She's a Jerusalemite who currently lives with her family in Riverdale, New York, and she will share with us some of her experiences throughout this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I totally sit here as part of the group of the petitioners. And I want to talk about it because when we started with the step that, thanks to a team that included us, Will Rachman and Kolech, you could ask us, why do we need to do this step? Like, we already studied in a halakhic private program. We already had people that come in and ask in halakhic questions. We already given lectures, given shiurim, given even Dvar Torah. But we knew that our daily life, it's not the right daily life. Not for us, because everything is so private. In some circles, it's normally kind of non-issue, but officially, it's totally an issue, or you don't have the language to talk about women with scholars in halacha being ordained, etc. And we knew that the picture through the perspective of the state, it's totally needed to be changed. And in the year that the petition was in the process, we heard some critique, and I'm going to talk about it. But for example, all of us had our private biography, and we can say that we share ma'avti toratecha kol hayom sichati, really the love of studying Torah, studying a high level of halacha, being curious. But it's not the only reason that women going to study Torah, even so that we can tell it to ourselves. It's a new step. It's not a new step that's coming out of the blue. There is a process. It's historical or historical process of the Jewish feminism in America and Israel and Europe. And when we decided to be part of the petition, we knew that it's not just our private story or even our private collective group story. It's a wider picture. For example, we are 6 petitioners. 5 of the group, the petitioners, grew up in Israel, in totally mamlechti dati system, education, midrasha, except of Rabbanit Rachel Keren that established, part of the team that established Midrashet En HaNatziv. Other from us went to Midrashot, and all of us, of the 5, served in the army, went to academic education, earned, most of us, MA, and then went to the halakhic programs. So we came already with like kind of privilege to these programs, and we could not choose this path, but we did because of our private reasons, but totally there is collective picture here. And we knew our friends that saying, I really want to study halacha, but you need to pay by yourself to the programs, or there is program with some scholarship, but it's not a lot of scholarships. And even so, in the end, what is it, the paper? Is it worth something? You know, all the adults, like I went to the university, like post-Holocaust way, like, are you going to be a teacher? It's not enough to be BA and MA in Revivim program that they did. Like, what is the certificate you're going to hold? But it's not just this adults question, it's totally normal professional question in Israel, in America, in Europe. So it's looked like a bubble. And we knew that the responsibility of the state is to take the budget that built the Rabbanut as an official institute of the state and giving the option to men as well, and women as well. So it's kind of a political step that we did, even so that you can claim what is the connection between politics and private process of holy studying, holy life, Kodesh. But it's Chol and Kodesh together totally. Because of that, when the petition process started, we heard some voices like this that critiqued us, like, how did you go to Bagatz? We heard the term Arkaot shel Chilonim, which there is no meaning in halacha. It's not exist Arkaot shel Chilonim. There is Arkaot shel Goyim, shel Akum. And the state of Israel, it's the combination between religion and state, democracy and Judaism. So going to the court of the state, it's not going to some other field that's really far away from us. And yes, you need the legal, the civil perspective, the whole language to have this discussion. So it's not something against religious life. It's just giving us the opportunity to live our religious life. And basically, it gives the opportunity to the Rabbinit Institute to exist. This is the way. So, and the other voices from the other side that we heard, it's about, what do you think? that you can join the patriarchic hegemonic system? Do you think that you're going to change world like this? Don't you know what Audrey Lorde said about the master's tools? You can't ruin the master's house like this. And we said, who wants to ruin things? Who wants really like to make it to be not exist? We belong to the Beit Midrash. We belong to this house as well. So if we are carrying Israel, the status quo, the combination between religion and state, that it's definitely a complicated situation, but it's not going to disappear. And this is the reality in Israel. So let's do it in ethic way. And let's ask the state to do the ethics thing. And we wanted the chief rabbis to understand it as well, even if they don't recognize us as Rabbaniyot, as ordained Rabbaniyot. The fact that all their institute sits on the budget of our taxes, part of the official state institutes, it needs to be open for men and women as well. And as advocate Elyssa Sakat said, when Aryeh Deri, that was a minister, said it's totally equivalent to academic points or degrees, so we had the degrees already, but it's not okay that other women can earn the same privilege, position, and credits as well. So at least this summer, finally, we heard the decision of the ruling that all of the three judges said the same, that yes, have you like you heard Rabbi Farber and Elyssa Sakat as well, that women need to take the exams as men as well. But just now, Wednesday, the gates started to be open to register. And the question, it's not just about now, about the date of Iyar. Of course, all the things that I've said before, it's totally correct. But the question is about what is going to be with students right now in high school that consider to go to Midrasha. Is it just a gap year and then the real life? Or real life is limudei kodesh and halacha, serious way that you can serve the community, you can serve people, not just women, men as well, couples, singles, people in any field of their life. And the question is, what will going to be with community that till now said they don't want women being part of the community team, leadership. Maybe this will change, not just in Israel, in America and in Europe as well. So this question, I'm going with the question, and I've got the feeling, as it said here, in a decade from here, it will be normal. It will be kind of a non-issue situation. When my daughter started to say Masechet Avot Be'al Peh in the Shabbos of the summer, and heard while she was, I think, 5, about the idea, we talked because of that, Ken Kol HaMelamed Torah et Bito Meladat Tiflut, so I had to explain her that far away in the history, just boy really studied Torah, studied Gemara. And it was like she was in shock. And nowadays that my girls studying Torah, the same material like their boys in their class, not with gap of years or the materials, it's a normal situation. So we can think about it of the process, not just Gemara in high school, not just Midrasha. We can think about the halakhic program. And the aim of the program, it's not just studying from the intellectual perspective, it's to serve the community. So I'm optimistic as well. I do think, as both of the speakers said before, it's going to be a long journey. Even so, I look for Iyar. I took a decision to take the first exam in the long process, like Rabbi Farber just said. And I'm going to do, Be'ezrat Hashem, the NIDA exam, because this is the first exam that we asked to do, and we got the negative answer about that. But I do want to do the big exams of Isur Ve'eter and Shabbos and Avelut and Kiddushin. I already did it. And I'm going to do it again, and it's kind to go back. Like, I already earned BA and MA. Why do I need to do things from my first year in academia? But it's not a private story, and even not my relationship with my daughters or maybe my granddaughters. It's a wider picture, and if you consider it, and if you know women that are considerate, I do encourage you to tell women to do this step. And it's a serious, really, it's not to turn on a bottom, like you said, it's a long process, and you need to take some weeks, maybe more than that, to read again the material and to be prepared as a student to exam. It's not the same like giving a halakhic answer as a daily work or volunteering. And this is part of the picture. I'm going to finish with that. Most of the women rabbi nowadays doing a lot of things as volunteers. Like they're doing it extra. And it's part of a feminism picture in the world. It's not just religious feminism, not Jewish feminism. And maybe with official certificate, women can give more effort, time, and earn serious and salary about this position. And it's, look, if you know the bubble of women that are already ordained as rabbi, you can think that it's just like such a good daily life. But basically, there is some privilege, a lot of volunteer, and it's not the picture that we want to hold. We want to change it and to be men as women, part of the leadership of communities and part of the communities. Thanks for listening and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Rabbanit Sarah. Before I introduce our final speaker, I just want to encourage people to put their questions in the Q&A. I'm collecting them. So far we have a few, but as things come up, please feel free to add your questions in the chat via Q&A. So now I'd like to introduce our final speaker, Rabbanit Dr. Esther Fisher. Rabbanit Fisher is the head of the Ein HaNatziv Midrasha and a proud graduate of its very first cohort, which pioneered women's Batei Midrash in Israel. The Midrasha and Ein HaNatziv recently opened a new branch in Kiryat Shmona as a response to this current war. And she's also among the founders of the Nigun Nashim Beit Midrash at Oranim, a study program for women from all backgrounds focusing on Judaism and feminism, where she taught for over a decade, and a graduate of the second cohort of the Rabbanut Israelit program from Hartman Institute and the Oranim Midrasha, and served as a Rabbinit in the fourth cohort of that program. So we're going to hear from Dr. Fisher about women's learning and the Midrasha world and how that coincides with this entire process.
Thank you, Elyssa. Thank you for having me. This has been so interesting to listen to, and with all this optimistic looking ahead, I'm going to take us a little bit backwards in order to see where we've come from, מאין באת ולאן אתה הולך, so to speak. So, as has been mentioned a few times already, when this event was planned, then who could have imagined that we would be meeting just a few days after another significant milestone in this ongoing saga of the Supreme Court ruling. So in the spirit of who could have imagined, I'd like to zoom out a little bit, and instead of looking back just a few weeks or days, I would like to look back with you all a little further. And I would like to take a few moments to emphasize this moment in history of what is already related to and called the revolution of women's Torah study or whatever. So as mentioned, I have the privilege and the zchut of heading Midrashet Ein HaNatziv, which is now marking its 40th anniversary this year, mamash. And as mentioned, Ein HaNatziv was the pioneer of Midrashot in Israel. It was the very first Beit Midrash established for young Israeli women. I'm pointing out the Israeli because there were institutions for overseas students. And it was an initiative of the religious kibbutz movement, which is important to point out. Now, I can talk about all this personally because that was also just mentioned, that I am the proud graduate of the first year. So as we say, Bedidi Hava Uvda, I was there to witness it and to experience the first cohort back in 1986. I was fresh out of my military service, and my friends and I, all we wanted to do was learn Torah Lishma, and there was simply nowhere to do this in Israel, which is, again, unconceivable where we're at now. So some of my friends who grew up in the religious kibbutzim, went to their movement leaders and asked, Lama yigara chelkeinu, and why should we be left out? And here we are, and this institution was open. Actually, it was an interesting moment because there was a debate in the Kibbutz Adati movement if to open up what was then Yeshivat HaKibbutz Adati, which already existed for men, and it was debated if to open that for women. And instead, they opened a separate institution, which is a moment in time to I like to pause on. So again, I'm saying if you would have told me then, as a young student who's entered for the first time into the world of Torah, that 40 years later I would be speaking on a panel regarding a Supreme Court ruling that there are women whose level of halakhic knowledge would allow them to take the rabbinic ordination exams, I really wouldn't have believed it. And in many ways, these developments of the recent months feels like some kind of like 40th birthday gift to Midrashet and Natziv, which, by the way, 3 of the 5 petitioners are staff members of Ed Natziv, and one of the others is a graduate of our halacha program. So there were הרבה שותפים לאדם. There were many partners in this journey, but we're experiencing this with a lot of gratitude and excitement. So I just want to say that this pioneering motif that I'm talking about is basically something that we think of a lot because being a pioneer is not something from the history, it's an obligation. And the question of what can we do, we're constantly asking ourselves, what is the next thing that needs to be done for Am Yisrael, for Israeli society, what is needed? And I personally believe that that's what my feminism is all about. Feminism is about taking this foundational experience of women throughout history that experienced exclusion and asking, okay, so who else has not been invited in, and who else can I assist in moving forward? So this Bagatz ruling is all about that, who's been excluded and who should be taking part. And I'll just mention briefly, because it was mentioned before, that our exciting new initiative of opening up a Bet Midrash for women in Kiryat Shmona is also exactly the part of the same idea. It's about inclusiveness. It's about asking who needs us, and it's about expanding this wonderful, amazing era of advanced learning of Torah, expanding it to the most northern city in the state of Israel, and especially now. So I want to speak in the name of what's called the periphery of Israel, about the places that are out there, and not everything that we're talking about this evening has reached these places, and that's something that we're trying to do. So I just want to say something about what's usually regarded to as evolution and revolution, okay, on this topic that we're talking about. In some ways, we can say that this new development is like a sort of a natural development of what's going on for 40, 50 years of women's learning. But as we also all know, and that's been referred to before, these things wouldn't have happened either 40 years ago or now if there weren't a few brave women and men that are part of this saying we have to take a stand. So I like to just put out this question of the evolution and revolution issue, and point out a few points that we've accomplished or gone through over these 40 years that I think are connected deeply to what we're pointing out now. And one is, as speaking as an Israeli institution that is part of another big change in the religious world here in Israel, and that's on the deep connection of military service of young religious women in Israel, and their advanced Torah study. Because this is something that, again, 29 years ago, when we started along with Lindenbaum, this unique track for going into the army as religious young women, because we identified that it's happening in growing numbers. So this was something that Midrashot started to do, or some Midrashot started to do. And I like to say that I see deep connections between these two advancements. One is that young women flocked to Batei Midrash and wanted to learn. And the other is that in growing numbers, they want to take part in military service. Just this recent Shabbat, there was a large article on the percentages of young religious women going into the army, and which of course jumped recently again because of the war. And I see these deeply connected, because these young women are saying that they want to move from the bleachers to being players on the field in two central arenas of their identity. One is their Jewish identity, the other is their Israeli identity, and they're saying we're not sitting on the sidelines, we're taking part, we want a place at the table, and we want to speak halakha, we want to speak Gemara, we want to speak Torah, and we want to take important parts in what's going on in Israeli identity, and that is their army service. So in both places, there are glass ceilings. In both of them, there are big questions about, are we doing it the same as men or differently? The liberal versus cultural feminism question. It's being asked in our Torah learning. It's being asked in women in the army. Should I encourage my students to enlist in combat roles? That's a big question now in the every institution that's working with young women. We're asking ourselves these questions the same way we're asking ourselves, are women learning halakha or learning Gemara the same way men are learning? These questions are going on in all these fields. The other point I want to refer to is the occupational horizons. And again, looking back, women that started 40 years ago, 30 years ago on this journey of learning, entering in the Bet Midrash, had no idea where there would be any option of any kind of career or paid job. And when I see over the years these young women entering the gates of the Bet Midrash, because I'm inviting them there, and they're falling in love with this Torah, and they're asking themselves and asking us, what will I do with this besides falling in love? So some of them seriously consider going on a track, of advanced learning. And Baruch Hashem, there are a lot of options of in-depth Gemara study and quality teaching tracks of Judaics, and now halakha study programs with stipends. This all happens slowly but surely. And then there was the Ta'anot Rabbaniyot in the courts, and then there was the Yoatzat Halakha. All of this is really an evolutionary kind of process that happened. And now we have the halakha programs that are in all areas. But again, the questions of, can you make a living from this? Is anybody acknowledging this as a real profession? Are big questions that these young women are asking themselves, and they're asking us, and we have an obligation here to give them good answers. We're just in the beginning of seeing communities that are willing to have women in leading roles and paying them for that. And I heard clearly that Rabbi Farber said in the beginning of our session that new opportunities will open, and I'm praying and hoping that we will see that happening, because these young women need it. So I'll just close up with saying one more connection, because as you heard in my personal bio, besides that Midreshet El Netziv is part of my personal growth, the other place I grew dramatically is the Bet Midrash for Rabbanut Israelit. And I want to connect that to what we're talking about, because it's amazing to see that there are different populations that were on the margins, and over the past 40 years have moved towards the center. And it's amazing to discover, when I discovered that, I was astounded that the same year that Midreshet El Netziv was founded, and another place in the country, what's called Jewish Renewal, started to form. Secular kibbutznikim came together and also said, Lama yigarach chilkeinu, and we want to take part, and we want to learn our Jewish sources. And this evolved into, as everyone knows, into various Batei Midrash, and a very exciting thing that's happening here in Israel as far as reclaiming Judaism. And both of these things happen at the same time. And I think the world of Torah has gained from it all. It's been challenged also, because when people who are not part of the discourse move in to take part, then things shift and happen. But all in all, I think both of these trends that are happening, both Orthodox women that are moving towards the center, and non-Orthodox men and women who are saying this is part of what we are also, and again, the margins are moving to the center, has made a major change, I believe, and for the better. But it's also challenging. What does it mean to be a rabbi? What does it mean? Who are we calling rabbis? Are we using that word? which has also been debated about Rabbanut Yisraelit. Why are you insisting on using this word? The same thing women are being asked. Why is it so important to you to take these exams, to be acknowledged as? Why can't you just continue sitting and learning? And that's a big question. But I think the answer is clear. Okay, this is what Jewish leaders are called. They're called rabbis or rabbaniot or rabbot. And we are using traditional terms for new things that are happening. So I'll conclude in saying that there's a lot still to be done, and I acknowledge that, but I try to give a little, like a few decades of perspective here and where we're moving to. And again, as someone who works with young women, we owe them good answers, and when we're inviting them into the Beit Midrash, we have to portray a clear future and where this is going to, and this is an important step in that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbanit Esther. Thanks for giving us some context, both historical, but also raising the important and challenging questions that face us now and will continue to face us. So thank you to all of our speakers. And now I'd like to thank our participants for their patient listening. And there have been a number of different questions. I'm going to try to sort of divide them into three groups. The first are a bunch of practical questions about these upcoming exams. So one question is, how many women do we anticipate will sit in the coming exams? There's also been a request to put the link for signing up. So that's a good sign that there are people on this call who are interested. And I see that Sarah already put that link up in the chat, and we'll send it out also to everyone who's participated afterwards, I believe. So question of how many women do we expect to register now? There's a question about, will the exams be available in English? And Reuven asks, will the requirement of learning posed by the Rabbanut be a hurdle for women, like the requirement of the number of years, or perhaps the places where they've learned won't be recognized? So if any of our panelists would like to address any of these questions before we move on to some of the bigger questions. Just unmute yourselves, because I don't know who wants to answer. Any guesses on how many will sign up?
I'll just say that I think my expectation is it's going to be a small handful. Remember, the exams are being given in less than 3 months. Not everybody's prepared for this, and certainly people who want to put their names forward are people who want to be successful. No one wants to fail. So I think we should look at this as kind of like a long-term thing and not a short-term thing. I think once it becomes regulated and people have a sense of when the exams will be given, I think people will prepare for them accordingly. So my guess is just a handful of women will sit in ER, just after Pesach. As far as some of the impediments, the 5 years and Midrashah, the 35 hours that appears. So this is all things that remain to be seen. Some of those requirements, the previous legal cases have demonstrated they're not relevant, even though they were put into the protocols. Maybe I'll make just one correction. It's not like the Rabbinate announced women can sit for the exams. They just said exams are going to be given, and here are the threshold requirements. Some of the requirements are still from 2022 that would seemingly include some women. Again, there's still work to be done, but in the meantime, people need to register, and then we'll take it from there. If they come back and say you can't take the exams, then we'll certainly fight to make sure that anybody who is eligible will be able to take them. And the next round, it'll go a few more rounds before I think this becomes normalized.
Thank you. Nisa also adds that there are already a handful of women from Marat Ba'aretz that she knows want to register.
I'm sorry, I didn't address the question of English.
Yes.
Though foreigners can take the exam, to the best of my knowledge, there's no exam right now given in English. that might be something down the road that might be, depending on how this becomes, the extent to which it becomes an industry standard. Right now, people, let's say men who want to take the exams, I think, to the best of my knowledge, it was that way in my day, and I think it's still that way today. They don't offer the exams in any other foreign languages.
I can answer to the question of Moria Ran, our colleague, Rabbanit, and a scholar that's just writing about this phenomenon now of Rabbaniyot in Israel, in America as well. I do think, and it's part of the petition that the lawyer Elyssa Sakat here and Elad Kaplan and Sarah Weinberg and all the team wrote very well. First, maybe every year 1,000 men going and sit and doing the exam, but just really little percent of them doing the full process and wants to be Yore. So we're going to join, think about the first year of a Talmid Yeshiva that's going to sit for the tests. How many of them and how many are women going to be? And I do agree with Rabbi Farber that it's going to be a process. About the public recognition, we do think that this is the reason we didn't agree to a separate department of the labor department, like the Rabbanut suggested that the labor department give us the opportunity, like to take the exams of being a manager of kindergarten, being the inspector of the hygienic of public swimming pool, working in electric, fixing things, and we didn't accept it. We said it's going to be kind of a pink path, and we don't want a pink way. We want the equal way. So when we, Be'ezrat Hashem, going to hold the exams grades, and it's going to be, this is the way of the Rabbanut. It's not just Yore certificate, as Sakat said, it's even the fact that you earn the points of Shabbat and Kashrus, and it can be mikvaot, and it can be other things as well. You can take new position in the state, not just religious. Because of the thing that they made, it's equivalent to academic point. So, for example, part of the people here know that I really thought of being the inspector of mikvot in Jerusalem, Moatzah Datit, a few years ago. And I couldn't take the position because I had to show that I've got not more, even 3 of exams, but none of my exams that I did, that it's more than 3, like officially recognized by the system of the Moatzot Datiyot. So it can open this position, but sometimes it's position, totally secular position of the state. And because it's equivalent to academic, you can use it. So it's going to open a wider options for women. And we need to think that it's not just the public that will leave the communities, like Rabbi Dr. Esther Fisher mentioned, that will take more women as rabbis. It's other position as well. So we can hold with the I have a dream, we have a dream about this future. And it's, as we said, it's a long process. And I see that my colleague and friend, Rabbanit.
Wait, I want to raise the question that our joint colleague and friend, Rabbanit Dr. Iris Yaniv, brought up. And I would say there's also another question afterwards. So I was taking them by section one at a time. And Rabbi Iris asks about the fact that we're having this session in English. And while the Rabbanut is a unique Israeli institute, why are we doing the meeting in English? But even more so, is it by chance or by accident that many of the people on this call or the people leading the process are originally from the United States? And she asks, why is she even writing in English and not in Hebrew, her first language? So I want to open that question up. I think it really reflects a bigger question really about how these processes have happened. Rabbanit Esther also mentioned that when the Midrashot started for Israeli women, there were already programs for American or Chutznikiyot women for Torah study. So that's a question I'd like to pose to the panelists.
I want to start just before probably Rabbanit Dr. Esther Fisher is going to give us the perspective of that, just because it's my fault or responsibility. The reason for this Zoom meeting is because immediately after the victory in the petition, Maharat, the Yeshiva of Maharat, asked me to have this kind of Zoom because there is a lot of interesting out of Israel in this victory, because there is a lot of already ordained Rabbaniyot in private program in America. Part of them made Aliyah, part of them considered to make Aliyah, part of them hold a citizen, they're a citizen of Israel in America and live in America. And there is an influence, potential influence in the America Jewish society as well. And it's not just by accident that this is the picture, as you mentioned, our colleague, Rabbanit Dr. Iris Yaniv, that this is the picture of Jewish feminism. So now I'll give Rabbanit Esther Fisher to talk about it because it took a lot of time here, but this is the reason. And as we know, a lot of echoes of the victory we heard and read in Hebrew. So this is the first Zoom that we've got it in English, but it's not denying the Israeli existence.
It's a wonderful question, and I can understand the answer because this was formed. I'm just going to say two short things on the question. First of all, I'm coming from an institution that is totally Israeli, and I have many of my colleagues that are not here this evening because their English isn't good enough. So that's first of all, but it's interesting. It would be interesting, but that's not the topic of this session. Is to ask about Jewish feminism in Israel and religious feminism in Israel and its origins. That started from it came from America, started here, went through a process that can be a whole session in itself. I just want to say that in the Netziv, our halakha program, we're into our third year of partnership, that our halakha program is partnered with Maharat. And we're very proud of this. And I think that's a groundbreaking event because these questions of women learning halakha here in Israel and women learning halakha in the United States, we're resolving them as partners now, and we're asking ourselves, what are we doing here that's different, the same, and we're in converse. And I think the fact that two institutions, important institutions that go way back, doing important work as far as women's learning, are partnering in a joint halakha session, program, is going to give more answers to your very good question. So that's all I'll say in short.
Maybe I'll just add the picture right now is really the mothership of Jewish Orthodox feminism sits in Riverdale. This is the reason for Drisha that established in Riverdale and Maharat. But the numbers of feminism, Orthodox feminism sits in Israel right now, the big numbers of women that already ordained, women that study, and women that serve the community, institutes, midrashot, position in high school as Rabbaniyot. And this is the phenomena that's totally interesting, but it's other conversation, but it's in the background of this meeting, probably.
Thank you for those answers. I'd like to pose our final question, which was raised by almost all of you, I think, and came from both Ilana Gimpelevich and someone else about what jobs do we envision opening up as a result of these exams, or what the sort of range of the occupational horizon could be. And I'm thinking about Attorney Sakat's statement that from her experience, these legal victories are only the first step, and that then there's the question of enforcement, and then later on in the process we will see how it will really have impact. And many of you, I think, by definition, are visionaries and are in these processes for the long run. But in order for us to walk out with some maybe picture of what that vision could be, I'd love to hear a little more from any of you of what new opportunities do you think could open up for women as a result, occupational opportunities as a result of this one more step in the longer and larger process that we're all witness to.
I can say that in Israel, at least, there's a lot of jobs requiring halakhic knowledge. And for now, it's only open for men. I think about hospital rabbis, about army rabbis, about head of departments in the religion council. There's hundreds of those in Israel. All of them are currently just men. And when this possibility will open for women, those jobs would open for women also. And I really agree with what you said. It's only the beginning. I think it's really, really difficult to envision in a specific way what exactly would happen in this amazing ride we're in. But for sure, something incredible is gonna happen, and a lot of jobs will open up, a lot of opportunities, a lot of things that we can't imagine even right now, because our imagination is so restricted by this current reality. But it's not always going to be this case. It's going to change and evolve, and our appetites are going to open up, and we'll learn to demand more and want more, and we'll see the results on the ground, I believe.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to add that when we started with the petition, most of us needed to explain why are we Rabbaniyot, not because of our husband. What is the knowledge? What is the position? What is the opportunities? While we heard the decision or the ruling, the victory, it's already phenomena of a lot of tochniyot for halakha in Israel. It's being ordained in a private program, wanted to be part of this program as well. So, and it took 6.5 years or maybe 8 from the first step that we did to register to the exams. And thanks to that, like the struggle for mikvaot and being toanot rabbaniyot, for example, we know that it's taking some years. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's decades, sometimes it's decades. But we saw the normal perspective, like being women as rabbis, as a normal thing, just happening while the petition was ongoing. So this is the process, and when you can hold it as a reason to be optimistic.
Well, thank you for that. I think we will come out optimistic from this session. I want to thank all of our speakers. I hope we will be able to provide answers for Rabbanit Dr. Fisher's students and our daughters and our granddaughters of a better future that we are now providing for them, thanks to the hard work of everyone involved. I want to also thank Rabbanit Daphne Laser Price for the technical support and making this all happen technically and surprisingly without a single glitch. Very much appreciated. And I want to repeat once more our appreciation to all of the partnering organizations, E-Team, the Rachman Center, Kolenu, Gluya, Jofa Ma'arat, Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, the International Rabbinic Fellowship, Uri Letzedek, Talat Chaim, and the Beit Midrash for Israeli Rabbis at Hartman and Midreshet Oranim, and the Rabbanut Israelit week in which this event is taking place. So thank you all for being with us. Good afternoon, good night, and chizku ve'imtzu.
תודה רבה.
תודה רבה.
תודה רבה.
Tada,
Thank you.
thank you so much.